A door. Look at that little door. Ooh, another door. It opens. Oh, how marvellous. Lovely. That's rather ingenious. It actually comes off. Marvellous. Hi and welcome to TMCB Studios. I'm Paul and today we're going to be looking at making a working fancy door. We decided to use basswood for this project rather than balsa wood or PVC foam board simply because it's a stronger material. It was then on to drawing out the shape that we wanted. We based this on what a 28mm miniature would need to get in and out of the doorway. Onto the cutting, a mighty craft knife was needed to get through the basswood. A scalpel could have been used, but it would have taken many more passes. Once the base shape was cut, it was onto then creating the slats that could go over the top of it. Each of these were about 5mm each, drawn into another piece of basswood, and then using a little tool we've created out of seamstress pins and some hot glue. It's simply just a case then of drawing this up and down the wood itself to create a nice wood grain. Back to the mightiest of craft knives to cut out the slats. Then after that it's just a case of sanding off the edges of each of the slats to give it a slightly round finish. This is one of those happy little accidents that you have while you're doing these kind of things where you do find that if you take the edge off anything at this scale, it does give it a little bit more realistic look than leaving it with a very harsh, sharp edge. Sandpaper is a winner for this. Glue. That's the next step. We tried to use some high-tack glue for this. It shortens down the drying time, which in the end obviously speeds up the whole process. At this stage it doesn't matter how long the slats actually are, they can be cut later, so each one individually put on with the glue, ensuring that the grain is obviously right side up, and then it's a nice hefty weight on top of it and leave it to dry just to make sure that it stays nice and flat. Back to our favourite beach, the mightiest of craft knives, just to cut down the lengths, and then we've got the other side to do, which is basically a repeat of the first. Once again, make sure that grain's the right way up. Once everything is dry, it's another case of slicing the bottoms off with that mighty craft knife. Then back to our close personal friend, the sandpaper. This just takes off any edges that are sticking out and makes everything nice and flush and even. It's then a case of trying to give the door a little bit of character, so using a scalpel, not the mighty craft knife this time, although that could be used, is then to kind of scrape away at the bottom and the top of each of the slats, making it look a little bit aged, a little bit worn. This just gives it, as I said, a little bit of character. But as always, do be careful, it's a sharp knife, and there are only so many fingers to go around. Once that's complete, it's on to making the metal braces. These are cut out of PVC foam board, I think it was about a 1mm, nicely drawn out, equal, and then with a curved edge put into them. Obviously these can be as ornate as you want, but for this example, they were nice and simple. Once these were cut out, sandpaper once again just to take those edges off, and then with a nice textured stone just to give it kind of a beaten metal look. Each of these were sized up again and then glued on with super glue, and probably a sneaky little bit of accelerator too. The next step was the bolts. These are made out of 2mm half pearls, I believe they were called, and these are simply just glued on with super glue. With brackets complete, it's onto the handles. These were made out of link rings, which you can get multiple different sizes. These were pretty small, probably about 4mm, and then some 2mm styrene tube. Cutting the tube down to very small little parts, and trust me, a few of these went flying across the room as well while I did this. Each of the rings are then split open and then threaded through. With a little bit of super glue, these are then glued onto the front, a little bit of persuading around to get it straight, and then likewise you can do the same for the back. But then the handle moves and gives that extra little bit of realism again. The next step is the more exciting part. What makes the doors work? What makes them open and close? And that's the hinges. So, onto some more 2mm styrene tube, and for these they're cut to roughly half the length of the actual bracket itself. 2 of these, one for each, and then glued on into the top point, making sure that they're actually slightly on line with the actual bracket itself, as you can see. Next step, is to make an actual frame for the door to fit in, because this is where the hinges will need to stick to on the other side. Once again, we use basswood for this just because it's the material we're using. It's nice and strong, and you can see the door fits in just lovely. So for the other half of the hinge, back to the styrene tube, same length cut again, and then using one of the seamstress pins, put it through with some super glue. We found that this worked best just because it has the end to it, which actually holds in there. Some accelerator as well, just to keep it all in there with some extra glue. And then as you can see, they just slip nicely onto the actual other side of the hinge. Plopping the door back into its frame, a tiny little bit of glue, tiny bit of accelerator, just to actually get those little bits of hinges to actually adhere, and then more glue, more accelerator, just to give it that stronger, firmer actual adhesion. And there you go, the door opens and closes. Beautiful, isn't it? And here you can see it actually in use. Ooh, look at that door open. Lovely. And as I said earlier, marvellous. Lovely. Well, hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really does help, and we'll be on to another tutorial pretty soon. Thanks again, and hope to see you again really soon.